Johnny Depp just said he was a crash test dummy for the #MeToo movement. And that's only the beginning. Because what he reveals next, it flips the script on Hollywood, betrayal, and what happens when the world picks a side before hearing the full story. Was he a villain, a victim, or something way more uncomfortable? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll question everything you thought you knew about the trial, the movement, and the people who went quiet when he needed them most. Oh, and yes, someone definitely gets thrown under the PR bus. Number 1, the statement heard around the world. Johnny Depp has said a lot of things in his lifetime, but this one hit different. In a recent interview, Depp dropped a quote that cracked through the Hollywood surface like a fault line. He said, "I was a crash test dummy for the #MeToo movement." That's not just a clever metaphor. That's a man politely setting a grenade on the table and pulling the pin with a smile. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't bitter. He didn't even name names. He just laid it out calm, raw, and strangely poetic. "I took it all in," he added. And just like that, a storm that had seemed to settle years ago started swirling again. Because now we're not just talking about a court case. We're talking about what it cost him to survive it. Let's be clear, this isn't Depp denying accountability or attacking victims. That's not what this video is about, and it's not what he said. What he is saying is that movements, especially ones as powerful as #MeToo, can sometimes run over nuance in their urgency to do the right thing. And for a while, Johnny Depp wasn't a person. He was a headline, a meme, a hashtag. People weren't debating his guilt, they were reacting to the vibe. And that vibe, guilty until proven canceled. Let's not forget, this all started with accusations from Amber Heard that turned into one of the most publicly dissected legal sagas in modern pop culture. And while the court may have leaned in Depp's favor by the end, the damage to his name was already deep. Before a jury spoke, the public already had. Studios cut him off. Friends went quiet. Even people who claimed to be neutral didn't want to be seen standing too close. That's what makes his crash test dummy comment so chilling. Because crash test dummies don't get a choice. They get strapped in and launched full speed into a wall to see what breaks. And for Depp, everything did, his reputation, his roles, even parts of his identity. But what if that wasn't the end? What if that impact wasn't the death of his career, but the start of something much messy, eh? Because in the next chapter, we're digging into how #MeToo itself may have been hijacked, and who paid the price. Number 2, how #MeToo was weaponized. The #MeToo movement started as a lifeline. For so many, it was the long overdue reckoning. The moment survivors could finally speak, and the world would finally listen. But somewhere between the righteous rage and the headlines, something darker slipped in. Johnny Depp never said the movement was bad. He said it was misused. And in his case, it became less of a call for justice, and more of a cautionary tale about what happens when nuance dies in the comment section. See, here's the thing about movements. They're supposed to be about truth. But truth takes time. It takes evidence, testimonies, cross-examinations. You know, the stuff courtrooms were invented for. What Depp got instead? A public trial held entirely online. The judge? Twitter. The jury? People who never watched the trial, but definitely saw the memes. The second Amber Heard's allegations surfaced, it was game over. Studios didn't wait. Brands didn't ask. He was dropped like a hot lawsuit. And just like that, Johnny Depp wasn't an actor. He was a symbol of guilt, of male privilege, of everything people wanted to destroy in that moment. The problem? He hadn't even had a chance to speak. Let's be real. There's a difference between accountability and annihilation. And when the latter happens before the facts even come out, you're not seeking justice. You're performing it. What Depp experienced wasn't just being accused. It was being repurposed. Suddenly, he wasn't a man in a toxic relationship. He was a placeholder for every bad man who ever got away with it. And that's not justice. That's projection. Now, before anyone grabs pitchforks, let's make one thing absolutely clear. This video isn't here to undermine survivors. It's to ask a very uncomfortable question. What happens when the movement meant to protect accidentally becomes the weapon? And Johnny wasn't the only one. Others got caught in the crossfire, some guilty, some not. But the moment someone is associated with wrongdoing, their name starts to rot. Google it. Their digital reputation dies long before the court date. Depp just happened to be the first one strapped into the seat when the engine of rage fired up. But here's the twist. His crash might have exposed something the movement didn't want you to see. Next up, the silence from Hollywood and why it said everything. Number 3, Hollywood's silent exile. In Hollywood, silence is louder than a scandal. When Johnny Depp was dropped by Disney, it wasn't with a press conference or a dramatic statement. There was no "we stand with survivors" declaration. Just silence. Cold corporate silence. The kind that doesn't even leave a voicemail. He was replaced in Fantastic Beasts before the ink on the headline had dried. Not suspended. Not temporarily benched, just erased, like he never existed. Except for the billions he helped rake in as Jack Sparrow. But hey, what's loyalty compared to liability? Now, studios will tell you it's just business, that they were protecting their image. But let's call it what it was, panic. The kind of panic that doesn't ask for proof, just distance. The further, the better. Because in the age of viral outrage, being neutral is dangerous, but being visible, career-ending. What stung wasn't just being dropped. It was being dropped quietly, like a guilty secret no one wanted to admit they once loved. And this is Johnny Depp we're talking about. The guy who turned a pirate with eyeliner into a global icon. The guy who once had Tim Burton and Disney on speed dial. And yet, when the headlines came for him, the industry vanished like it owed him money. But here's the twist. They didn't just ghost him. His closest friends did too. The champagne circles, the red carpet allies, the ones who clapped at his premieres? Radio silence. No texts. No public support. Just tumbleweeds and industry buzzwords. And if you're wondering why no one spoke up, here's a hint. No one wanted to be the next crash test dummy. Because defending someone in the middle of a cultural storm? That's how you end up trending for the wrong reason. So instead of risking it, they watched him burn from a safe distance. Probably from a private screening room. Now, you might be thinking, maybe they were waiting for more evidence. Maybe they didn't know what to believe. Fair. But ask yourself, why did they get the luxury of hesitation, and he didn't? But just when you thought the silence was the worst part, wait until you hear what came next. The betrayals that hit even deeper from the people who knew him best. Number 4, Amber Heard and the public perception shift. At first, Amber Heard's accusations seemed airtight. The headlines were brutal. The hashtags moved fast. And Johnny Depp? He became Hollywood's cautionary tale overnight. No trial. No time for nuance. Just instant meme-fueled judgment. But then the tapes leaked. You remember the ones. The audio where Amber is heard admitting to hitting Johnny. The tapes where her voice didn't sound like a victim. It sounded like someone in control. And suddenly, the narrative that had been fed to the public with such certainty started unraveling, thread by thread. Now, to be clear, this isn't a video that tries to villainize Heard or glorify Depp. Real life is messy. Courtrooms even messier. But what did become obvious was how little people actually knew about what went on behind those closed doors. And how quickly everyone was willing to pick a side anyway. When the trial finally happened, streamed like a true crime series with viral edits, it wasn't just about two celebrities fighting in court. It was about power, image, and the dangerous speed of public opinion. TikTok was flooded with clips, commentary, and breakdowns. Twitter treated the courtroom like a football game. People weren't just watching, they were competing to dunk on one side or the other. And here's the mystery box twist. Despite evidence shifting public support toward Depp, Hollywood stayed silent. Major outlets hesitated. Studios held the line. It's almost like they were waiting to see which way the cultural wind was blowing before saying anything at all. And that tells you everything. Because when the public started questioning Heard's credibility, when inconsistencies in her story began piling up, and when even fans who originally supported her began to second-guess, Hollywood didn't course-correct. It just waited, like it was buffering. That silence, again, speaks louder than outrage. But if you think the silence from Hollywood was brutal, wait until you hear what Johnny said about the people closest to him, his supposed inner circle, the ones who were supposed to have his back when the world turned against him. What he reveals, it cuts deeper than any court case. Number 5, inner circle betrayals. They say when everything goes dark, you learn who your real friends are. Well, Johnny Depp learned. The hard way. In his own words, he said people from his inner circle did me dirty. And no, he wasn't talking about studio execs or tabloids. He was talking about the people closest to him. The ones who toasted to his success. Rode in his private jets. Maybe even borrowed a few million here and there when the times were good. But when it all hit the fan, they vanished faster than a PR rep in a scandal. Think about it. This is a guy who had a decades-long career filled with loyalty. Same agent, same legal team, same trusted advisors. And yet, when things got messy, they were the first to hit the eject button. It wasn't just betrayal, it was betrayal with a schedule. Some dropped him quietly. Others made vague public statements about letting the legal process play out, which is rich considering they didn't wait for any outcome before pulling the plug. One moment, he was their golden ticket. The next, a headline liability. Now sure, some might say they were just protecting themselves. And that's fair. Self-preservation is a strong instinct in Hollywood. But for a man who once housed friends, supported colleagues, and stayed loyal through storms, the silence must have felt like a different kind of knife. The emotional kind. The one you don't see coming because it comes from behind. Depp didn't name names. Maybe out of restraint. Maybe out of exhaustion. But the message was clear. The people he thought would ride with him to the end were actually just along for the ride. as long as it was smooth. And here's where the open loop creeps in. If they could turn their backs so easily, how many others in Hollywood are smiling in rooms they secretly want to escape the moment scandal hits? But Depp didn't stay down for long, because while his old circle was busy distancing themselves, he started building something new, something no one saw coming. Up next, how Depp rebuilt his identity far away from red carpets, and why his comeback didn't need Hollywood at all. Number 6, canceled but not broken. Most people, after being publicly exiled, would go dark. Maybe change their name, grow a beard, start a podcast. You know, the usual celebrity post-scandal starter pack. But Johnny Depp? He did something else. He picked up a paintbrush. Instead of fighting Hollywood for the spotlight, he made a quiet exit and turned toward the kind of art that doesn't require box office returns or Rotten Tomatoes reviews. He painted. He played guitar. He toured with rock legends. And suddenly, the man everyone assumed was fading started becoming more visible, just not in the way anyone expected. No press junkets. No interviews begging for redemption. Just creativity. Just art. Just a guy doing what he loved, without asking for permission from the same people who left him behind. His comeback didn't look like a movie trailer. It looked like a museum exhibit. His artwork, portraits of icons like Bob Dylan, Heath Ledger, and Elizabeth Taylor, sold out within hours. It was like the world remembered who he was without the Hollywood filter. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, so did he. The irony? By being kicked out of Hollywood, Depp found his way back to something more powerful than fame, authenticity. No scripts, no handlers, just raw expression. Of course, the industry began to notice. Quietly, like that ex who watches all your stories but never likes a single one. Suddenly, directors were open to conversations. Studios started using phrases like moving forward and new chapter. Convenient, right? But Depp didn't sprint back to reclaim the spotlight. He walked deliberately, carefully, and in many ways, he decided what the second act of his story would look like. Not the headlines, not the studios, him. Still, while his personal revival was underway, a much bigger question began to surface. One that doesn't just affect Depp. It affects the entire industry. Because if someone like him can get wiped out so fast, what's stopping it from happening to anyone else? Next, the uncomfortable truth Hollywood doesn't want to admit about fear, silence, and a movement that may have overcorrected. Number 7, the bigger problem no one wants to admit. Here's where things get uncomfortable, because this isn't just about Johnny Depp anymore. It's about what his story revealed. Depp didn't just walk through fire. He came out on the other side holding a mirror. And what we saw in that mirror wasn't just his bruises, it was ours. A culture obsessed with outrage. A system quick to destroy and slow to forgive. And a movement that may have, at some point, lost its steering wheel. When Depp said he was a crash test dummy for the #MeToo movement, he wasn't attacking survivors. He was pointing to the fallout, the overcorrection, the fear, the silence. Because in Hollywood right now, people aren't just afraid of doing the wrong thing. They're afraid of saying the wrong thing, even if it's true. Think about it. How many public figures tiptoe around every sentence? How many people hide behind PR teams and pre-approved statements? How many careers now live and die not by their actions, but by the allegation of wrongdoing, long before any evidence shows up? And yes, some deserve the fall. But what happens when the system that was built to protect victims becomes a weapon in the hands of opportunists? It's the question no one wants to ask out loud. Can you believe survivors and still protect the innocent? According to Depp, the answer has to be yes. Because if we don't learn how to hold both truths, if we keep choosing sides before the facts, we're not building a better culture. We're just playing emotional roulette. And someone's reputation is always the cost of a spin. Now, here's the part that should make every Hollywood exec sweat. Depp's story resonated. Not just because he's famous, but because so many people saw themselves in it. Not the courtroom drama, not the luxury homes or movie sets, but the feeling of being falsely labeled, misunderstood, silenced. In the court of public opinion, nuance is a dying art. And Johnny's story just might be its last warning shot. But here's the thing about warning shots, some people ignore them. Others start preparing for what comes next. And in the final chapter, we're asking the question no one dares to touch. Was this whole thing ever about truth or just control? Johnny Depp called himself a crash test dummy, but maybe he was a mirror. This wasn't just his story. It was ours. About fear, silence, and how fast we cancel before we ask questions. The real twist? This might not be the end. It might be the beginning of a much bigger reckoning.